There's a photograph of Coretta Scott King taken the night her husband was killed. She's standing very straight. Her face is composed in the way that people compose themselves when falling apart isn't an option. She had 4 children. She had a movement. She had a phone that had been tapped for years by her own government. She already knew before anyone told her what kind of country she was living in. Start there. Start with her. Because the story of Martin Luther King cannot be told honestly without understanding what it cost the people closest to him and what it cost him to keep going when the state had decided he needed to stop. Martin Luther King was born in Atlanta in 1929, the son of a Baptist preacher, into a family that understood both faith and dignity as forms of resistance. He was, by every account, extraordinarily gifted. A doctoral degree from Boston University at 26, a preacher's command of language, and a philosopher's instinct for the question. He didn't stumble into leadership. He walked into it with his eyes open. What he was asking for, stripped of the mythology, was simple: that Black Americans be treated as human beings under the law, that they be allowed to vote, to sit where they liked, to walk through the world without fear. He said it in churches and on courthouse steps and in front of hundreds of thousands of people in Washington. He said it so clearly, so without hatred, that it should have been unanswerable. The answer came from J. Edgar Hoover. The FBI's campaign against King began in earnest in the early 1960s. Hoover called him the most dangerous man in America. His phones were tapped. His hotel rooms were bugged. Agents followed him, documented his private life, and then used what they found, or fabricated, to pressure him, to discredit him, to send anonymous letters to his wife. At one point, the FBI sent King a package containing recordings and a note that read plainly, was an invitation to kill himself before they destroyed his reputation. This is not speculation. It is documented. The Senate's own church committee confirmed it in 1975. The effect on his public standing was real. By 1966, polls showed that nearly 2/3 of Americans had an unfavorable view of King. He had, in the years since the March on Washington, begun speaking about poverty and the Vietnam War, about the connections between violence abroad and violence at home. The machine that had built his image found those connections inconvenient. The press that had celebrated him pulled back. The approval ratings collapsed. Coretta didn't pull back. People who knew them both say she was the one who held the frame when he was exhausted, when the death threats had become daily noise, when the surveillance had made even private grief feel watched. She believed in what he was doing with a steadiness that outlasted him by decades. She spent the rest of her life protecting and extending his work, and doing it largely without credit. King was assassinated in Memphis on the 4th of April, 1968. He was 39 years old. James Earl Ray was convicted of the murder and spent the rest of his life in prison, though he recanted his confession almost immediately and maintained his innocence until his death. What complicates the official account is this. In 1990, the King family brought a civil lawsuit, not against Ray, but against a local businessman named Lloyd Jowers and, in their own words, other unknown co-conspirators. The jury found in favor of the King family. A government conspiracy, they concluded, had been involved in the assassination. That verdict received almost no mainstream coverage. America has a particular pattern. The man who threatens to reorganize power gets a lone gunman. The questions get buried under process and time. A statue goes up eventually. A holiday gets named. And the edges, the poverty speeches, the wiretaps, the civil verdict, get smoothed away until what remains is safe enough to put on a classroom wall. Martin Luther King was not safe. That was the point of him. The woman standing straight in that photograph understood it. Next time, we'll talk about another woman who understood it, one whose active refusal on a city bus in Montgomery was not, as it turns out, spontaneous at all. Her name was Rosa Parks, and she was ready.